And now for something slightly different. Though, admittedly, I couldn't do what I do today without the folks that were just on the stage. I come from a technical background. I actually worked for John at one point. I don't think I ever had the pleasure of working with Wayne. I was a flight controller. But I fell in love with space when I was a little girl. And I'm a big believer that space inspires. All of you would not be here at this conference if you weren't inspired by space in some way. And it's my first time here, and Pat, thank you so much for the invitation. I certainly do not intend for this to be my last ISPCS, but I'm thrilled for it to be my first. I knew from a young age that I wanted to go work in the space industry, and so I followed that path. Maybe that's the same for all of you. You knew. But there are a lot of kids out there that don't know. I've heard folks here talking about workforce development. Yes, certainly, this is a problem. We have more STEM openings than we can fill with students. So how do we capture those kids? Well, I believe that there are two things that excite all students. And by students, they could be students who are 5 or 85. I will tell you that my grandfather, till the day he passed at 95, he would call me and ask me questions about space. It's something that inspires. Okay, so space and dinosaurs. And I know absolutely nothing about dinosaurs, so we'll go with what we know. The ISPCS theme of go use it, we'll get you there speaks to me because that's what I'm trying to do for students. We run a program called Go for Launch, where high school students can work with an astronaut for the entire event and compete to have their ideas launched on some of the vehicles you've been hearing about today. Now, I suspect a lot of folks in here have met an astronaut before. Raise your hand if you've met an astronaut before. Okay, kind of a cool thing. Do you remember the first time you met an astronaut? I do. I met Jerry Ross at the Popcorn Festival in Valparaiso, Indiana. He signed a picture for me, and then when I went on to work with him at NASA later on, he begged me to quit telling that story. He's like, please stop. I said, why? He's like, well, because if you're working here now, and you remember me signing a photo, that might mean that I'm a little bit older than I'd like to admit. And I was like, no, Jerry, you're Doogie Howser. You started, as an astronaut when you were like 12 or something like that. It was meaningful to me. And so part of the core of our program is to have astronauts there to serve as mentors throughout the entire event. They can talk about flying on the space shuttle or flying in a Soyuz. They can talk about what it's like to unpack that Dragon or that Cygnus. They can also talk about, hey, I think I'm trying to get a pilot's license, but I'm not sure if I really want to do that. What was it like for you when you tried to learn how to fly? Those interactions are priceless. They're something that these students will cherish for forever, whether they're rocket scientists and they come work in our industry, or they work in any of the other industries that are desperately in need of STEM graduates. So in addition to the astronauts, who, don't get me wrong, are super cool and amazing, maybe I'll be tagging some of you to help like these others have. We bring in scientists, engineers, people of a wide variety of backgrounds, because here's the thing. Everybody in this audience, you all had a different path to get where you are. And you never know when that path is going to speak to a student. And so as you take so much away from this conference, all the great conversations as we sit like elephants around a table like Mary Lynn brought up yesterday, I love that. If I can ask you to take one thing away from my talk, it's you have the power to inspire a student with whatever it is you're doing in the industry. So please share that with them. You might think, oh, well, I don't know. I'm not talking about the environmental control systems like Grant did, or I don't get to talk about Dream Chaser like John did. But you don't know that what you do might not be exactly what one of these students wants to do. Believe it or not, a lot of the kids who come through our program have no interest in riding on top of a rocket. I, on the other hand, Blue Origin, when you're taking volunteers, let me know, Erica, because I'm on board. But so we bring in other space and STEM experts, and the students work on a variety of hands-on activities to build teamwork, leadership, and in my opinion, one of the most important pieces, communication. I'm consistently hearing from people in industry, and I'll be honest, it's what I saw during my 11 years at NASA from people coming out of university. Communication is a core competency that students are still struggling with, and it's not getting better. The fact that you can text and email, does not necessarily help the ability to communicate in a group. And so they either love me or hate me at the beginning, depending on if they're happy to speak or not, because within 10 minutes I have them standing up and please tell me your name, tell me something interesting about you, and tell me something that you think you're good at. I'm not going to embarrass everybody in here, but I suspect there are at least a fraction of this room who would walk out the door under the auspices of, I need to go get some water, if I forced you all to do that. Not everybody loves to speak. That's one of the things we work on with these students. But the big piece of it is, every team is going to have to come together, and by the way, most of them don't know each other before they show up at this event, which we run all across the country, and come up with an idea that fits inside a 1U cube, about the size of a Kleenex box, that they would like to see tested in space. Now, this is not a CubeSat. We are not sending it off to orbit the Earth. We are sending it up in a vehicle, at this point, normally, to fly to the International Space Station, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There are certain things they can't do, and the things they always want to do are mice or some other animal that they will convince me, Michelle, I swear there's one small enough to fit in there. I promise I saw it at the zoo. No vertebrates, nothing that explodes, no fire. So for all my colleagues out there who are safety folks, I worked on the PSRP for a year, the Payload Safety Review Panel. I get it, these things are bad. I also joke nothing that if the astronaut eats it will end in their death, generally ill-advised. But beyond that, it's up to them. They have to come up with the idea. Now, we've had students that are STEM superstars who do everything you can imagine, FIRST Robotics and Team America Rocketry Challenge and all of those kinds of things, and they come in and they do well. But we also have those students who, if I get really blunt here, we have students who come in and are like, science sucks. But space is cool. All right, I can work with that. They may have no STEM background. They may have barely taken a general science course. And we lead them through in a way that we get them to, you'll see the irony in this, think outside the box to put something inside the box. That even the students who are not STEM savvy can excel at this. We had a bunch of foreign exchange students who were liberal arts students at St. Edward's University come over, and the first time they were terrified to do this program with the students at St. Edward's University. St. Ed's program is the only one that we've allowed freshmen in college in as well. The next year, all the follow-on students were begging, can we please go for launch because we heard it's really cool and you work with an astronaut. So we've created this so we are reaching the students who might not have already figured out that STEM is cool and that space is really cool. Not trying to make them all rocket scientists, but it's a great way to get them engaged in STEM. Now, at the end of every event, we pick a winning team. Those winning teams' experiments are competed against each other. Unfortunately, I don't have a teleporter yet. If anybody here comes up with one and you want to lease it out to us, I'd be happy to fly the students so they can compete in person. But for example, right now I have a panel of judges looking at our AIAA Apollo series winning teams. And we'll announce the winner for that on Facebook Live on Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Those experiments will fly to space. And to give you an idea of what this means to these students, this is a video that I'm getting the goosebumps. I've seen this video 100 times. And there's a couple of you in here who have seen it. And I challenge you that I suspect you will feel the same way seeing it a second time. The girl in the middle, her name is Leia. She is in high school in the Chicagoland area, and she's a hard time finding her way. I don't know about all of you, but that's something that I very much associate with. I was not the popular kid in school. I knew I loved space, but I kind of didn't fit in. Her older sister is a total rock star at something, and her little sister is a total rock star at something, and Leia's been trying to find her way. She knew she liked space. Well, she ended up on a winning team from our 2018 series, which had 6 different events in it that were competing against each other. And this is the video of her family watching the Facebook Live announcement when we were announcing who the winner was. And so I'll watch the dad. I think there are some dads in here who might have a lot of empathy for this.
So, the panel of judges, which included scientists, educators, engineers, astronauts, they looked at all the experiments, they posed some questions to the students, and the students responded with their answers. After which the judges have taken a look to, as I call, rack and stack and put the experiments in order of which we would launch them. My joke is, only half joking, is if we had a endless amount of money, I would love to launch them all.
I know it's like a reality show, I drag it out, right?
The joke is if I found out George Lucas was my long lost uncle, I'd launch them all. But we've racked and stacked. We know who the winner is. I will tell you it was close. It's very, very, very close at the top amongst several of the experiments. But the Go for Launch 2018 series winner is Regine. And
the dog gets in on it. I'm not kidding. I've seen it 100 times and I still get the tears because this is the impact that space can have on a student. No, I can't launch every kid's experiment to space, but those that we can, changes their world. Okay, I'm not a scientist. I'm an operations girl at the end of the day. I did space station operations for 11 years and I loved it. Science, I have friends on speed dial who are super smart that work for CASIS and NASA, and I ask the questions of them. Their science may not change the world when we fly it to space, but it changes their world. And how do you know that they won't change the world down the line? Maybe they'll change it in our industry. Maybe they'll change it in the medical industry. Maybe they'll change it in an industry that doesn't even exist today. But this is the reaction we get. Now, we have flown 8 experiments to space so far, our first being from the Chicagoland area. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you want to ask in-depth questions about these experiments, please don't ask them of me. I will happily connect you with the students because they're the smart ones. I had astronaut Mark Polanski at ISS R&D as he was talking to a couple of the students who had a payload. They're telling him info, and I'm getting this look. I'm like, what? He's like, do you understand what they're saying? I said, yeah, about half. He's like, I would never have gotten into college if I had to compete against them. I certainly wouldn't have become an astronaut. The idea these students are coming up with boggle my mind. So our first experiment was a radiation experiment. We were very excited that we have this great picture with Mark Vande Hei of it in space, the team from the Chicagoland area there on the bottom. We had a nitrogen fixation experiment. Students from Gilbert, Arizona. They wanted to test peanut plants in space. We had to do a little bit of modification. It became microclover in space. And this was a great opportunity, not just for the science, but Abby Yonker, who is currently touring schools to become a freshman in college next year, she got to be part of what's on board. This is a little girl, and I shouldn't say little girl. I just have this love for her that she's like I'm space mom to her now. She hated speaking. She was terrified of standing in front of a room of even 20 people. And she stood in front of a packed house at Wallops Island and gave a press conference. It's not just the science, it's the whole package. We had bees in space. This one was a hot topic, and the astronauts on board wanted to know more. We had 5 bees that we flew up in a cocoon. In their cocoon form, only one came out. Please don't ask me to also pronounce a lot of these things, because this one I think I almost have it. I think it's Megachili rotundata. That's the type of bee. They did name one of the bees Elon Musk because it launched on a SpaceX rocket. I thought R2-B2 and Elon Musk were my favorite names. Did you know radiation can fungus can sometimes kind of eat radiation? That's layman's term. We flew this in the fall, Durham, North Carolina. I put the cities on there because I want you to see that this is representation from across the country. And our goal is to not just reach the students who otherwise have access to these programs. Our goal is to reach the kids who don't necessarily have access to these programs. And we've been very fortunate to have partners like AIAA and BRPH, thanks to Rich Press, who have helped us do this in various locations all across the country. Sarah was part of Team Ness, which flew the bees in space. She recently presented a poster session at ISS R&D. She'd never seen a rocket launch before. I suspect this happens with all of us. We kind of forget how lucky we are to be in this industry sometimes and just how amazing it is to watch a rocket launch. Of course, I say that and I tear up every time I watch a rocket launch too. After her launch, I put her on the spot. I said, don't really think, I'm just gonna ask you a question and I want you to answer it. And so she just watched from OSB-2 with her entire team, her payload fly to space, and this was her reaction.
So Sarah, this is your first rocket launch. You have bees on board.
I do have bees
What do
on
you think
board.
right now? How do you feel?
That was incredible. I'm still processing, I think. When they did the countdown, I think is when it really hit me. They were counting down and it felt like I was in a movie or something. You're just, they go 10, 9, 8, and you're like, I didn't know, was it really happening? Like, yeah, it was really happening. And they get to 1 and you see the fire under the rocket and you don't hear anything at first because it's like so far away, and you just see it go. It's like in silence. It's like that scene in the new Star Wars movie when it just like shoots through and everything's silent until it's not, and you hear the rocket from so far away, and you're just, at least I was just in awe. I was humbled by just the sheer brilliance, and it's really just amazing what humankind has been able to do, what SpaceX has been able to do. That we're sending up, this is the 15th resupply mission, they're sending up, a rocket up into space. That's incredible. And I have bees on it. It's even more incredible. I'm in awe. I'm in awe.
How we have evolved in this industry is what makes this possible. We are so fortunate to have the benefit of it not being a 2, 3, 4, 5-year process to get something in space. Thanks to our integration partner, Space Tango, we can get something to the space station in well under a year, and sometimes in as little as 6 months. It's a game changer for us. It's a game changer for these students. We have a variety of other experiments, including art in space. Again, if you want to know more about these, I will happily put you in touch with the students, not the person to answer these questions. We currently fly on Dragon and Cygnus, and we do it through Space Tango, through CASES, through a Space Act agreement, and all that good stuff. But we're very excited that in the near future, we will be flying our first Art in Space payload on Blue Origin's New Shepard. I have students who are still like, okay, space is cool, science is scary. I'm like, okay, but how about art? How do you feel about art? Ooh, art's cool. Okay. So hatched the idea of bringing students in the same concept, but now I challenge them, I want you to figure out how you're going to use microgravity to create art. And they do. And then afterwards I go, so how do you feel about science and engineering now? Oh, I still don't like it. Really? Because that's what you just did. Well, what do you mean? Well, you had to think about fluids in microgravity. Don't you realize that's science and engineering? And so we're very excited about that. And we also, in December, will be coming back to New Mexico to launch another Art in Space payload on a Sugar House rocket. So we are excited about all the new players. I would love to be adding Sierra Nevada's Dream Chaser and Virgin Galactic to this list, because the multitude of possibilities give us more opportunities for students. And the idea of spaceports all across the country, I love. I would love for students to not have to get on a plane and travel quite so far to see a rocket launch out of their backyard, or to be able to see a rocket launch in their backyard. It's life-changing. These are pictures of some of the teams that have had their experiments flown to space or are flying to space. We have a couple we haven't added. We've reached over 1,200 students. We've done nearly 50 programs. We are about 40% female organically, 35+% underserved. And our goal is to keep inspiring students in the years to come. We love to partner with folks, and at the end of the day, people ask me, Michelle, what you do, how do you keep traveling? That right there, that smile. That student who, this is another student who's like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about science or engineering, came to a program. She got to put on a spacesuit thanks to the Heinlein Prize Trust and astronaut Don Thomas. And now she is applying to universities to study aerospace engineering. The gal with bees in space just started Stanford, not doing too shabby. So this is a way to reach students. This is a way to develop the workforce. At the end of the day, it's a way to inspire the next generation of STEMists and Explorers. We can't do it without all that is happening in commercial spaceflight. And so we are grateful to be able to stand on the shoulders of giants as we help to launch our next generation of workforce. And I think it's fun that some of them may be doing jobs that we aren't even imagining now, and I think we're a pretty imaginative group in this room. I thank you for having me here, and I guess I'll take questions.
Yes, we have questions.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Michelle, thank you for an inspiring talk. What strategies have you found work best getting opportunities out to the underserved communities?
So that is one of our biggest challenges. I can't be everywhere. People ask where our office is or where I live, and my answer is United Airplanes, because that really is where I spend most of my time. We're reliant on our local hosts and our local partners. And so where we are best able to serve the underserved communities is when we have someone locally who will help put us in contact with the superintendent or the Boys and Girls Club or things like that, so we can make sure that these students are getting access. At the end of the day, it comes down to, as you all know, dollars and cents, no bucks, no Buck Rogers. And so sponsors play an important part with that as well.
Okay. Is there a way for folks to sponsor a school or a team? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Feel free to contact us. We would love to sponsor your school, your Boys and Girls Club, anything like that. We have sponsorships that start small, go big. Go to our website. Anywhere it says contact us. The us terminology, the only other living creature in the office has 4 legs, fur, and barks at FedEx. So I promise you'll get a response from me.
What's the cost of taking your program to a school?
So the cost to take a program to a school is a little dependent on, we've had some schools want to guarantee a launch specifically from their school, and that is one price. And just so you know, the rack rate on a 1U, the way we do it, is about $25,000 plus add-on blah, 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 astronaut costs, travel costs, and all that. The bottom line is between $15,000 and $40,000, depending on if you want to guarantee a launch or if you are happy to have that event compete against a handful of other events.
Okay, how do you judge and ultimately choose the winner?
Oh my gosh, it's the worst part. It is, so at the events, the students can tell. I get this really stressed look as they finish their presentations. They're like, what's wrong, Michelle? And I'm like, now I have to do the part I don't like. I have to determine out of all these amazing ideas, what is the one we are going to take forward? I always have the astronaut who is their help, and we try and get other local folks. At the end of the day, we're looking to see what is the most viable, what is interesting, what is going to be something maybe a little unique, but ultimately what's going to work. And then the panel of judges that picks the overall series winner, they're people from within our industry who have seen a lot of science in space. And if I'm very honest, at the end of the day, like I mentioned on the video, if George Lucas was my uncle, I could probably fly all of them and we'd all be very happy with what we get back.
Very good. How can local schools in our area, and I don't know where that is, but the question is, how can local schools get access to your program? We have nothing like this available in on our area.
Well, we will be releasing our 2020 schedule as it becomes available, but contact us because if you want one in your area, I'd love to bring one to your area. I'm from the south side of Chicago where we didn't really talk about space. It was a steel mill town. I was lucky that I had the Museum of Science and Industry that had a Omnimax, and I got to see The Dream is Alive when it first came out, and that helped keep me motivated. So it's really important to me to be able to bring this program to students who otherwise wouldn't be able to go to space camp in Alabama or something like that. So please, just reach out. I'd love to work with you.
What is the one project that got away, one that you thought should fly but lost to another team?
That's a hard one. There's so many good ones. One of our biggest challenges becomes technology within a 1U that is automatable. And so there are some awesome experiments when you start talking tardigrades and fruit flies that are really well thought out, but would require us to pull it out of the cube and put it into something else. And so sometimes we have to not pick that because it is such a higher price point. And you know, one day, George Lucas, Ancestry.com.
Will your future students, I love this question, will your future students ever get to join their project in microgravity as with Fiji or Blue?
Only if I get to go first. So I would love that. Ideally, as things evolve, you know, I never intended to be an entrepreneur. So when people ask me what's your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, I'm like, I'm working on the next week plan still. But as we evolve into suborbital flight, even flights like 0G on the parabolic aircraft, I would love to be able to take students, and maybe that's the graduate level, to do these things. But I do tell them that I get to go with them for the first flight, because, yeah.
Do you work with universities?
We do. So we have worked with a variety of universities. St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas is a great partner of ours. We have an MOU signed with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University's College of Arts and Sciences in Daytona Beach, where they are pairing our students who have the greatest of intentions of taking this science through to fruition, but they don't necessarily always have the tools to fully analyze and synthesize that data. So Embry-Riddle is partnering our students with undergrad, grad students, and professors to help them take that data through to publication. And so we do have a couple of universities we work with.
People at this conference seem to be obsessed with money. I don't know why that is, but they have questions about that. Where does your funding mostly come from?
So it's a combination. We are a pay-to-play program. Johnny and Susie's mom or dad has the money to pay to attend. We are certainly happy to have that. Part of it comes through sponsorships from companies. I will tell you, I am also the person who literally begs for donuts. And so I'm going to be in Rhode Island in 3 weeks, and I have a list of bakeries. Hey, would you like to donate breakfast for 50 students for this event? And so it is definitely a grassroots effort. Grants and things like that, we've gotten a grant from the Durham Library Foundation where we were able to do 6 programs where no kid paid anything to attend. But unfortunately, I don't have a grant writer, and so other grants, the ROI isn't high enough for the time it would take me to write grants. So really, sponsors and registration fees.
Have you done any evaluation?
Oh, and donations.
Okay, yeah, good. Yes, donations. See her at the door, right? Have you done any evaluation on your program's efficacy in meeting your goals? Have you got metrics, for example, on that?
And so metrics is a tough one for us because we've only been doing this since 2016. Anecdotally, I have a lot of data of students who came in not interested in science at all and are now choosing to study engineering or science or physics, or at least have a little bit more of an interest in their courses than they did to start with. We certainly have been doing surveys, but we're just not quite mature enough yet.
What help could you use from this group here in order to reach more students?
Oh, whoever that was, I'm going to give you a cupcake. Thank you. What can you do? Help us spread the word. I'm a one-woman show, and so trying to get the word out there in communities that I'm not in is something that is our biggest struggle. And I want to make sure that all students who are interested can attend. So consider volunteering at an event. Consider helping us bring an event to your community. If we have an event in your community, reach out to me and I will send you the information to send to schools. All those kinds of things would be hugely helpful.
Good. Do you work with the NASA Flight Opportunities Program?
I do not, because the paperwork and proposal process would take me longer than I have.
Hear that, John?
Sorry, guys. If I'm just blunt, I don't do paperwork. I don't even do the paperwork for our space flights. Space Tango does it for me. And so that's part of why I love them as my integrator.
Well, we're about out of time. I've got 2 comments here. They're not really questions, they're comments. One is kind of artsy. It must be blank verse. So I'll just read what it says. STEM, really important that kids understand value of science and exploration and the risks and the costs as they grow up as community leaders to help reduce political quagmires of progress.
I like
Not
that.
a question, but I like it.
I like it.
And then we got a couple of votes for this comment. Love your dress.
Thank you. The company is called She Nova. She does all STEM-inspired fashion. After I left NASA, I realized I actually like being a girl. And I used to wear khakis and a polo every day. And then I went off and started my own companies. And I'm like, I can kind of wear whatever I want. And I have found that actually, if I might digress here for a second, that is the most effective way that I reach girls. I don't point out that I'm a girl. I'm pretty sure the fingernails, the dress, I'm pretty sure that that says it all to them. And so by putting women at the front of the room, naturally we're 40% female. I never target women in my programs. It just happens. And so these dresses I love. She's even done a custom Higher Orbits one. There is a Merlin engine one. There's an exoplanets one. So yeah, Shinova fashion. Thanks for noticing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Michelle.
Wayne.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work.